Welcome to the Beyond Bound Coach and AD Professional Development Series, a weekly online professional development for athletic administrators and coaches. Join us as 6 former ADs now employed by Bound and with over 100 years of combined experience discuss topics important and beneficial to ADs and coaches. Join us on this journey of professional growth. We're here to help you take your coaching and athletic administration to the next level and beyond.
Welcome to Beyond Bound for January 19th, 2024. Beyond Bound is a group of us athletic directors and former coaches who get together and try to share a little professional development with each of you. Kind of hoping to lighten your load. Maybe we can give you some suggestions and tips that we've learned over time to make your job easier, your job more enjoyable, and so forth. So today, there's a couple notes again about what we're all about. Today we're going to talk about how do you make the right decision when the heat is on? You know, what are we talking about when the heat is on? Well, there's probably a lot of things you can think of right now within your jobs that, you know, the heat becomes, pretty intense at times. It could be a parent issue, could be employee issue, team culture issue if you're a coach. Maybe you were asked to raise millions of dollars and you're just feeling like the heat's on, man, I got to get this done. You could have conflict between coaches. You could have, and you got to face that. You got to get that problem taken care of. You could have budget cuts coming up within your department, and you're going to feel the heat in those situations. So how do we handle that? What do we do to go about our thinking processes? Well, I just threw a few notes down here to think about. If heat's on, don't put all that burden on your own shoulders. Gather information and desire input from others. Talk to colleagues. Talk to somebody who's walked in your shoes. Ask respected friends for input. Wise people. Talk to wise people, because asking wise people for advice kind of seems to lead to wisdom of your own. I think that's important. We each gain wisdom each day. Talk to the people in the trenches, on the front line, people that it's going to affect or could affect based on your decisions. So gather that information and desire that. Another thing you could do, discuss this thoroughly with those people. Desire debate. Ask and encourage your people you're talking to disagree with you, to give you a dissenting opinion. It's always good to see the other point of view. What's it look like from the other side? I think another reason to do that is this can empower the people you're visiting with to be more open to share with you in the future on issues, because you've asked them for their opinion. I kind of like this one. Timing is everything. Timing. You got a timeline. When you got to make your decision. You got a conflict between the softball coach and the track coach, and that those seasons overlap and they've had trouble in the past. And don't wait till the middle of the season to talk to them. You're going to have to make that decision and try to work things out prior to that. So know your timing. Sometimes if you delay, it's too late. You missed a great opportunity. So know your timing. A good decision at the wrong time really is a bad decision, and we want to avoid bad decisions. And be willing to fail. That's simple theory. Things can go wrong. You can do your best and can still go wrong, but you can't operate out of fear of failure. Fear is forget everything and run, or face everything and rise. I think you have to face everything and rise. We learn a lot from our failures. I think failure can accelerate our personal growth. We don't want to fail all the time, but when we do have failures, we can grow from that, and we should always desire growth. The only unforgivable mistake, I think, is maybe making the mistake you had made previously. So you don't want to repeat your mistakes. And the fifth thing I have is be consistent. I think people appreciate when you're consistent, especially when you have consistency within your character as a person. They know what you're like. They kind of anticipate types of decisions you're going to make. And being consistent is important. It's important within consistency to set aside, your personal preferences or biases. Try not to let that impact what you do. And a couple other thoughts to share. Sometimes if you have time, you can use the 1-3-1 method. As an old basketball coach, I like the 1-3-1 trapping defense. Well, there's no trapping involved with this, but the one is to identify the challenge you're facing, identify that heat. And then the 3 is think about 3 viable options. What are 3 things you can do to solve this situation? And then think about how you're coming up with those as well. And then the 1 again is come up with 1 recommendation and share that with one of those trusted colleagues. And maybe that results in you being affirmed, but maybe it results in you going back to the drawing board and coming up with a different solution. So 1-3-1 is not a bad thing to try. And then this one is, I think I operated in this mode a lot as an assistant principal and athletic director, and that is I always tried to make decisions when the heat was on with 1 eye on what's going on right now and 1 eye on the future. Now, what is this decision going to do today? And what could it do for the future? Will it cause future problems, or could it provide future solutions? I think, we've probably all ended up in both of those categories where unfortunately we've caused other problems. And yet most of the time we hope we've provided some future solutions. So, gentlemen, with a few, if you don't mind, if you have a situation that you felt the heat when you were an athletic director and you want to share that without naming names, feel free to do that as we discuss this. And I'll start with Joey.
Yeah, great topic, Mark. A lot of good stuff here. One thing I think that came to mind as you were talking about getting help, gathering information, is we still have to remember that we can delegate tasks, we can delegate items, but we can never delegate responsibility. Everything that happens in our programs is ultimately our responsibility. And that doesn't mean to put pressure on anyone or yourself, put too much pressure on yourself, but you have to keep that in mind. Ultimately, I'm the one who has to make the decision and the responsibility falls on my shoulders. But that also gives the people below you permission to speak freely because they know it's not their fault. It's not their responsibility to make that decision. I can't think of a specific situation in mind, but they happen daily. You come up across situations on a daily basis to varying degrees, and you have to get people to work together. And that's part of what you said. Get those people together, empower those people to make their own decisions. If you have, okay, I'll use a specific situation. We have conflict in the wintertime with gym space and my basketball coaches. Their job in the fall was to come up with their own practice schedule. I give them a list of here's what's going on in the gym. Here are the wrestling tournaments, the gymnastics, everything we have in the wintertime. You guys figure out your practice schedules and then bring it to me and I'll approve it or disapprove it. So getting them together, empowering them, making them work together avoided the conflicts because I just brought it to them in the first place. I'm not going to do it and then create you guys a fight between you guys. You guys hash it out before you get to me. You're adults. So great stuff.
Very good, Joey. The word empowerment was used in your little discussion there several times, and we all know how important that is. Brian, what do you got?
A great stuff. My head's all over the place here with this because I could go a million different ways. As ADs, as coaches, I think we feel fire all the time, Mark. If you get into this job, either of those 2 jobs, not expecting there to be fires, you're in the wrong area. So I think this is awesome. I think you need to think through what you would do, how you'd handle situations. I think for me, I can think of a million situations. One of the ones that I learned from early and decided I'm never doing that again was it happened to be girls athletics because we share more girls. There's not as many girls out for athletics in general. And so we happen to share a lot of kids and we want to be good at everything. And that takes some extra training, some out of season work. And so we had a lot of in-season, out-of-season bickering my first couple of years, and kids turned on coaches, adults, turning on each other type of thing. And I didn't think that would be my job. I really didn't. I didn't. And one of my early years, I'm like, okay, this is 100% on me, like Joey just said. And so just thinking that all through, gather information, Mark. I call other ADs all the time and ask. I'd call Scott, I'd call Todd Gordon. I called other ADs all the time. Hey, what do you do? It doesn't mean I did what they did. So to a certain extent, sometimes they tell you exactly what you were going to do anyway, but it makes you feel more empowered to do that. Timing. I very early in my career, Mark started saying, we're going to front load this type of information. So what I did in that situation, I made all those coaches sit down and put the entire calendar on my whiteboard with me sitting right there. And they're all good friends. I mean, they're all good friends. They all want what's best for each other, but to a certain extent, they want what's best for them. But when they're sitting together, they make really good decisions. It was way, way different when they're sitting together and they agreed, hey, every one of our sport. I was so proud of the first meeting they came out of. Those coaches said, the season after your season, you're not ever going to do any off-season work. So if you're a softball coach, you're never going to have any fall off-season work for your kids. Never going to ask my kids to do that because I don't want them competing against. If you're a volleyball coach, you're never going to have winter off-season work. They wrote out a schedule, they shared athletes, and they did it in a way to not overwhelm their kids. So, Mark, really, really good stuff. I could think of a million situations, but if you're a coach or an AD, I think you need to be talking about this type of stuff. This is awesome.
I like what you said there, Brian. Gathering information, what you did is you gathered the people.
Mm-hmm.
You gathered the people to gather the information, and that just took all the pressure off of everybody. And it took the heat off of you, because if you just, handed down some document, then nobody's happy. And
Correct.
So you gathered information by gathering people. Great idea. Todd, what do you got?
Yeah, you just said it, Brian. That's a great idea. I wish I would have done that. That would have saved me some heartache and grief. Mark, I'm like Brian. It's like my mind's going 100 different directions, and I'm thinking of. I don't have a million descriptions like Brian does, but I've got a few. And I just think the biggest thing is, I think that I learned over the years was to anticipate the heat more, and then just don't avoid it. It's not going away. I think probably early in my career, I tried to avoid it. It doesn't go away. And so as I grew more mature and more gray, probably because I avoided the fires, but I think you just got to face it. And I loved your quote, face everything and rise. That's great wisdom. The other thing that came to mind was, and this came from a superintendent that I worked for a few years back, and he was very good about thinking about how this is going to look in the future and what can of worms this is going to open up if we make this decision compared to this decision. He was really insightful, and I took that with me later. About the last 10 or 12 years that I worked, was that was good advice. Don't rush into it. You got timing when you got to do things, but not rushing to make decisions sometimes. Making decisions stepping out of the fire is important too. That you don't always make the decisions in the middle of the fire itself. So this was really fantastic, and I think something that you got to learn to grow into a little bit. But I think the younger ADs, if you can lean on people that have been through the fire a little bit, that's wisdom too. And it doesn't mean you lack anything. It just means I think you're intelligent, seeking some wisdom.
Yep. Yeah, I think anticipating problems, as you mentioned, is it keeps the heat off. The heat can't build. You put the fire out before it starts. I think that's all good. As athletic directors, you have to learn to do hard really well.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of hard things you do, a lot of hard decisions. You have to learn how to do hard really well. Because the easy bus isn't coming down the street for you to get on. Now, maybe Mr. Jarvis rides the easy bus because he was an expert at everything, but the rest of us, we had to learn how to do hard really well. So Scott, you want to finish up here?
Yeah, I just think of a quote from Coach Wooden. He goes, "Surround yourself with people who are strong enough to change your mind." And I love that. And I think it fits in with this so well. And Todd mentioned it already, but one of the things I feel like I learned was that don't let that, big, or that issue become big. And I think back to Brent Butcher a few years ago spoke about swallowing the frog. Don't let that frog get so big that you can't get it down. And younger in my career, I did that. I let things blow up on me because I didn't address it. As I got older, I remember one time in particular, I had a parent who was screaming up in the stands and acting like a belligerent idiot. And mostly because their kid was not starting and they thought their kid should be starting. And I remember just scared to death to even address it. But I went up and I said, "Hey, this needs to stop." And I said, "You need to come meet with me tomorrow." And we had that discussion. And the biggest thing was that I felt bad is the kid felt horrible because he knew what his place on the team. Parents did not. Now, this kid did go on and ended up being a starter for us, but it took him just his mindset, getting to where he needed to be. And how many times do his ADs or coaches have to make decisions for kids that might be a parent or there might be an outside situation? We have to intervene, and those are hard situations. So I always get back to that, I had great people I could reach out to. Todd and Aaron Stecker and so many great people. I talked to Brian, and then the other thing through the NIAAA, I can reach out to somebody like Joey Struey or somebody like Mark Armstrong in Nebraska. I mean, just that network. And again, surrounding yourself with people who are strong enough to like, "Scott, have you really thought through this? Have you thought about this and this?" And I'm like, "Oh, you're right, Mr. Wise, Todd Gordon. I did not think about that." And how important that is in that decision-making process, that gathering information, evaluating it, making the decision. And another thing I learned from Mr. Gordon here is you got to start, you got to take that action. And it's not always easy. So this was awesome, Mark. Thanks for sharing this today.
Yeah. You talked about all the people that you would visit with in situations. And I think of basketball coaches, they seem to have quite a network amongst themselves, always sharing ideas. And yeah, a lot of times it's just, what do you do? And, when you're facing the box and one or whatever, but there's coaching networks out there, and you have to have an athletic director network too. You have to have a group of people that you're connecting with all the time. And Brian, you got another, something to offer here?
Yeah, because you said that, and I think if anybody's been listening the last several weeks, we talk about your competition's not the enemy, right? And as soon as you do that, the whole world seems to open up for you. And that is a perfect example. As a coach and as an AD, they're not the enemy. You all want the same thing. You just want it for your own kids, and that's fine, but you all want the same thing. So I didn't want to talk forever. I just wanted to point that out because we've talked about that multiple times now.
Yep. Anything else from anybody? Well, again, as always, we try to share some thoughts with you out there, and and try to make your job and your day a little bit better and a little brighter. So thank you for listening, and make it a great day or not. The choice is yours.